Welcome to your storytelling. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to subscribe. It started off innocently enough, just a slip of the tongue. I thought nothing of it when my husband called me by a different name. I laughed it off, assuming it was an accident. After all, we had been married for years, and we had our little quirks. But this wasn't the first time it happened. No, it was becoming a pattern. One night, after a long day at work, he called me Emily. I stopped dead in my tracks. I had never met anyone named Emily in his circle. That's when the first seed of doubt was planted. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he's just tired, I told myself. But as time went on, the name mix-ups only increased. It started with Sarah, then Hannah, and even Olivia. Every time it happened, I found myself more and more confused. Why was he calling me by different names? Did I look like these women? Or was there something else going on? The more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I became. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. There were other things too, little changes that began to build up. He was coming home late more often, always with an excuse. Work, he'd say, or I lost track of time. But I knew better than to ignore my instincts. There was something he wasn't telling me. His usual routine was disrupted, and his attention was no longer fully on me. It was like I was losing him, piece by piece. And yet, he was still calling me by the wrong names. It was one evening when I decided to snoop. I never wanted to be the type of wife who invaded her husband's privacy. But this was different. I couldn't ignore the feeling in my gut. I opened his laptop while he was in the shower and found the evidence. There were messages, texts between him and someone else. The name Emily appeared in every single one. I froze, my heart racing. This wasn't just a slip-up anymore. There was something more to it. I couldn't stop myself. I kept reading the messages, each one more intimate than the last. He was talking to Emily like she was someone special to him. He talked about plans, about memories they shared. They even spoke about meeting up. My mind was spinning. Was my husband having an affair? Was I just a placeholder in his life? This couldn't be happening. I couldn't believe it, but the evidence was right there. I wasn't just a victim of name confusion. He was hiding something much darker. I knew I had to confront him. The truth was out, and I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. When he came out of the shower, I was sitting there, staring at him. His eyes flickered nervously as I asked, "Who is Emily?" He hesitated, looking guilty. I could feel the tension thickening in the air. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice shaking. But I wasn't buying it. I showed him the messages. His face turned pale. It was as if he'd been caught in the act. He didn't say anything for what felt like forever. At first, he denied everything. "It's nothing," he insisted. "She's just a friend." But I could see the panic in his eyes. If she was just a friend, why was he calling me by her name? Why were they having intimate conversations? The more he spoke, the more his words seemed hollow. It was clear he was lying, but I didn't know how deep it went. Was Emily just a friend? Or was there something else going on between them? I couldn't stop pressing him. "Why are you hiding this from me?" I demanded. "What's going on between you two?" The truth began to unravel slowly, piece by piece. He admitted to meeting Emily a few months ago, but he insisted it was nothing serious. "She's just someone I met at work," he said, but I wasn't convinced. There was a hesitation in his voice that made me question everything. If it was just a friendship, why had he been so careful to hide it? The more I thought about it, the more it hurt. My mind kept replaying those messages, those words of affection he had written to her. It wasn't just a slip of the tongue anymore. He had been calling me by her name because, in his heart, that was who he was thinking of. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly heartbroken. The man I thought I knew was slipping away, and I had no idea how to get him back. As the days went on, I kept pressing him for answers. And then, one day, he admitted it. "I've been seeing her, and I don't know how it happened," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "It just happened." My world shattered in an instant. The man I married, the man I had trusted, had been living a double life. The truth hurt more than I could ever have imagined. I wasn't just another name to him. I was a fool. The aftermath of that conversation was nothing short of chaos. He begged for forgiveness, pleaded for me to understand. But I couldn't. I had been betrayed, lied to, and used. My heart ached as I tried to process everything. Was I just a placeholder in his life? Was I just someone to fill the space until Emily came along? I didn't know who he was anymore. All I knew was that everything I thought I knew about him was a lie. As the days passed, I was left to make a decision. Could I forgive him? Could I look past the hurt and the lies and trust him again? The thought seemed impossible. My heart was still broken, and every time I saw him, I couldn't shake the image of him with her. Emily, the name that haunted me now. I had to decide if I was strong enough to move on, or if I would stay and try to salvage what was left of our marriage. I tried to go through the motions, pretending everything was okay. But it wasn't. I couldn't stop thinking about his affair. I couldn't stop imagining him with her, laughing, sharing moments that I should have been a part of. The pain was unbearable. Every time he touched me, I flinched. Every time he spoke to me, I heard her name in his voice. It was too much. The struggle between love and betrayal was tearing me apart. One night, I found myself crying in the bathroom. It was the first time I had let myself truly feel the pain. I had been holding it in, trying to be strong, but the truth was that I was shattered. The man I loved had betrayed me in the worst way. And worse, he had done it with someone who was now more important to him than I was. The realization hit me hard. He was never going to be the same man to me again. I couldn't pretend anymore. After a long period of contemplation, I knew what I had to do. I had to let go. He had chosen her over me, and no matter how much he begged or how many times he apologized, I couldn't go back. It wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the fact that he had called me by the wrong name, as if I wasn't even the person he wanted in his life. I told him it was over, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had to move on. Starting over wasn't easy. My world had been turned upside down, and I had to rebuild from the ground up. It was painful, but it was also liberating. I realized that I deserved more than someone who couldn't even remember my name, let alone my worth. Slowly, I began to focus on myself. I started doing things that made me happy, things I had neglected for too long. It wasn't an overnight process, but I was healing. As the months passed, I started to feel like myself again. I was no longer defined by the betrayal. I was stronger, more independent, and more aware of my own worth. The mistakes of the past were no longer holding me back. I realized that I had been so focused on holding on to someone who didn't value me that I had forgotten to value myself. Now, I was free to become the woman I was always meant to be. One day, I ran into him. It was awkward, but I was calm. He apologized again, but this time it didn't affect me. I had moved on. I realized that seeing him was no longer painful. It was just a reminder of the strength I had found within myself. The chapter of my life with him was over, but I had turned the page and started a new story. Looking back, I realized the biggest lesson I had learned was not about him, but about myself. I had spent too long questioning my worth based on someone else's actions. Now, I understood that I was enough, just as I was. And no one, not even him, could take that away from me. As time went on, I embraced the future with open arms. I had learned to let go of the past and to move forward. There would be challenges, but I was ready to face them. I had found peace within myself, and that was all that mattered. The past no longer had a hold on me. The future was mine to shape. It took a long time, but eventually, I found closure. I had come to terms with the pain, the betrayal, and the lies. It wasn't about forgetting. It was about understanding that what happened didn't define me. I had grown stronger through the experience. It had hurt, but it had also shown me what I was capable of. The finality of it all gave me peace. I no longer carried the weight of his actions, and I was free to move forward without looking back. In the months after everything ended, I began to realize how strong I truly was. I didn't need anyone to validate my worth. The experiences I had, good and bad, had shaped me into someone more resilient than I had ever known. I had endured the ultimate betrayal, and yet I had survived. I wasn't broken, I was whole. The confidence I had lacked before was now a part of me, and I felt empowered by the lessons life had taught me. One day, I ran into an old friend who had been there for me through it all. Her support during those dark times had been invaluable. She reminded me of the strength I had shown and how far I had come. She had witnessed my transformation, and I could see the pride in her eyes. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone, that others could see the woman I had become, someone who was finally in control of her own story. As time passed, I began to see things in a new light. I wasn't defined by what happened to me, but by what I chose to do moving forward. I had stopped living in the shadows of my past and began to embrace the future with hope. I could look back at the hurt, but I no longer felt its grip on me. I had changed, and now, I could see the beauty in the life that lay ahead. I started doing things I hadn't done in years, taking up hobbies, spending time with friends, and focusing on my career. The woman I had once been, lost in a relationship that no longer served me, was no more. Instead, I had rediscovered the woman I had always been, beneath all the pain and heartache. I was no longer the wife who was betrayed. I was a woman who had fought through the storm and emerged stronger. And I was finally living for myself. As the months went by, I met new people, friends, acquaintances, and even someone special. It wasn't about replacing the past, but about building new connections. I wasn't looking for validation or approval. I had found it in myself. But meeting others, people who saw me for who I truly was, reminded me of the world of possibilities that lay ahead. It was a refreshing experience to be around people who supported me for the person I had become. One day, I received an invitation to a gathering. It was from a mutual friend, one who had been close to both my ex-husband and me. At first, I hesitated. The thought of seeing my ex again made my stomach turn. But I realized I wasn't going there to relive the past. I was going there as the woman I was now. With confidence, I accepted the invitation. It was a moment of closure, not for him, but for me. I was no longer afraid of the past. It didn't hold power over me anymore. At the gathering, my ex-husband was there. Our eyes met briefly, but there was no tension, no lingering anger. I saw him, but I didn't feel the hurt. I didn't feel the pain of betrayal. I simply saw him as a part of my past. The man I had loved, the man who had broken my heart. But he wasn't my present, and he wouldn't be my future. I smiled politely and carried on with my evening, realizing that I had finally moved on. As the months turned into a year, I realized that I was in a completely different place. The woman who had been broken and betrayed was gone. In her place was someone who had rebuilt her life, piece by piece, stronger and wiser than before. I was no longer seeking answers from the past. I had created a future for myself, and the possibilities were endless. I was in control of my own happiness, and I was excited for what the future held. Looking back at everything, I realized that the best thing I ever did was let go. I had clung to a relationship that no longer served me, and it had held me captive for far too long. Letting go wasn't easy, but it was the most freeing thing I could have done. I had learned that my happiness didn't depend on anyone else. It came from within. And now, I was finally free. Free to live, free to love, and free to be the woman I was always meant to be. And for that, I was grateful. Thank you for listening to my story until now. If you liked the video, please support it by subscribing and liking.